What's up, Internet? Wayne here, and it's about that time. That's right, Captain America Civil War has debuted to the general public. I have seen the movie twice. I enjoyed it both times. There's some things wrong with the movie, but there's a lot of things right with the movie, and really, do I need to even ask if you can tell which team I'm on? That's right. So that's right. We're going to talk about Captain America Civil War. It was a great movie. Great movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it. This is the movie that Batman vs. Superman should have been. They cover a lot of the same issues. Superpowered beings, accountability, destruction. Its effect on the everyday man. And whereas Zack Snyder completely dropped the ball, the Russo brothers picked up that ball, ran it down the field, and scored a touchdown. There you go. There's my sports analogy for you. The movie is great. I would definitely recommend it. I have seen it twice. I will probably more than likely see it again before it's all said and done. You see a lot of things the second time around. You pick up on little small things here and there. But overall, it is a very good movie. I thoroughly recommend this movie to go be seen by everyone. It is a great culmination of about 8 years worth of movies. Unlike, I would say, Avengers and Avengers 2, which are basically just end caps of phases. Avengers 2, Ultron, Age of Ultron really came out of left field. It didn't feel like it had a place amongst everything else, with no real build up to Ultron. This, you can really feel like there is, like, every other movie has led to this. I think that there could have been a little bit more of the universe nods. We don't get a mention of the Inhumans. We kind of get like a mention of a perpetual increase in powered beings, as Vision calls them. You know, enhanced humans or enhanced beings, I think is exactly what his words were. That's about the only real nod you get to anything else happening outside of just the movies. Which is okay. I really do wish they would kind of like get on the same page with the TV and the movies, and I just want to see Coulson, I want to see Steve's reaction to Coulson being alive, Tony's reaction to Coulson being alive. There's never any mention of S.H.I.E.L.D., what's going on. Especially in Age of Ultron when they, Fury showed up with a helicarrier, there was no, like, where did this come from? Whereas it really should have been Coulson delivering the helicarrier to them and saving the day at the end, not just Fury. But, with that said, I think this movie gives plenty of nods to everything else that has been going on in the cinematic universe. I can highly recommend this to anybody who has seen any of them. This is a very good movie. It's a very funny movie. It is very entertaining. It's 2.5 hour movie, and at no point was I bored. So that is pretty well, a well done job of filmmaking. That 2.5 hours in, and I was not ready for it to be over. I felt the movie could have been longer. I would have liked to see some things fleshed out more. But that we'll talk about in the cons section. First, let's go over what I find the pros of this movie to be. The dynamic between Captain America and Iron Man is a very believable dynamic, because Tony feels that he is responsible for a lot of the things that have happened in the Marvel Universe at this point. So it makes sense that he would want someone to oversee him and basically tell him yes or no. And we even get some backstory. Like, the Russos do a great job of just giving us a little bit of backstory on things from other movies. Almost as in like a way to explain away the horrible ending of Iron Man 3. Like, everyone hated that, so the Russos kind of like throw that out there when Cap is talking with Iron Man. And he's like, a few years ago I almost lost Pepper, and I blew up all my suits, and I did all this stuff to try and save her and keep her around, but I couldn't stop what I was doing because I don't want to stop, and she left. So it really, the Russos kind of say, yeah, that Iron Man 3 ending, we know it was kind of crap. Sorry, Shane Black, but your ending was kind of shit. So let's just do away with it. Like, no big deal. So I was okay with that. Like, it was great. I like that they kind of just threw that away. So the dynamic between Iron Man and Cap is a believable one, as Cap is always been that person who could see good from evil. He always had a good gut intuition. He always, you know, if he saw a bully bullying someone, he had to, you know, intervene. He wasn't just gonna let somebody. He just couldn't let someone get away with doing something that they shouldn't be doing. And it's completely understandable why Cap's like, no, I'm not signing this. I'm not going to be held to an oversight by someone who could have an agenda. Which is completely, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe now, understandable. Whereas, because Rhodey at one point goes, this isn't the World Security Council, this isn't S.H.I.E.L.D., this isn't Hydra, this is the UN. But then you have to look back at it, and this is where the kind of like TV universe comes in. The World Security Council was kind of run by Gideon Malik, who, if you watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., was a head of Hydra. And he was so high up that even after Hydra was exposed, he was still perfectly hidden. So you have individuals out there who have their own agendas that you don't know about, and Cap's like, we don't know who, like, they may send us to do something that we shouldn't be doing. And it's a perfectly conceivable rationale in this world. So it's really all about Tony wanting someone to be able to tell him what to do because he can't trust himself. And Cap going, no, I know right from wrong. I don't need someone to tell me. And that plays into the end of the movie, like towards the end of the movie, where it's like, oh crap, Iron Man made a mistake. Like, all of this could have been avoided if they would have just listened to Steve. Like, if they would have listened to Steve from jump, none of this would have happened. But because Iron Man, he's reactionary. Whereas Steve, like, he thinks things through, and he knows, that's why he's the de facto leader of the Avengers. He has that leadership quality, that ability to gauge a situation and make the decisions. Whereas Tony is very reactionary. Like, no thinking. Like, he is a genius. Like, the best way to describe it is he has all the book smarts in the world, but when it comes to street smarts, not that bright. So he is very reactionary, very like, you punched me, I don't care, I'm gonna go after you. Which kind of really leads into the end of the movie when you get into that final climax, which I'll bring up a little bit later, because I'm going to try and go through this as much as coherently as possible, not just jump around. The second part that I loved about this movie is you have Captain America is the central figure, and he is the central figure of this movie. So you have Bucky as like the big catalyst for everything that's going on, and that is Steve's best friend, like the only person he has left from his actual life, you know, before he was frozen. And then you have Falcon, who is like his new Bucky, like his new best friend, the person who he has connected with the most in the modern era. And Bucky and Falcon are basically the same character, just from two different eras in time. So to see the dynamic play out between Falcon and Bucky is quite, I mean, it's funny. It's like they're both vying for Steve's like attention and love. You have these two characters in Falcon and Bucky who are figurative brothers to Steve Rogers. You have Bucky, who was there his entire growing up life pre-World War II. And you have Sam, who was basically has become his brother in arms, his, you know, that battlefield brother post World War II, post Thaw, you know. So they have a great, you know, affection and love for Steve, and they want, it's like not an outward rivalry, but you know it's there from their exchanges in the movie. To when they're in the little bug, and you know Bucky's like, "Can you move your seat?" and Sam's like, "No, like no, I'm not moving my seat." And to have Falcon and Bucky fight Spider-Man, which was the greatest pairing to like fight Spider-Man, because you have Falcon who kind of has a quippy, smart alecky personality, which was perfectly played off against the perfect rendition of Tom Holland's Spider-Man, of the one-liners and the things like that. And him and Bucky fighting Spider-Man, and that, you know, when that fight was over with and they're both laid out on the ground, and, you know, Sam's just like, I hate you. You know, like, he doesn't really hate him. And you see that again when, after they're all caught and Tony goes to the raft and Sam's like, look, you know, I don't need your explanation. If you're gonna go after Steve, you need to go alone and you need to go as a friend. Because you can't go as an enemy. Like, he knows Cap that well. Like, if you go at him, it's just gonna make things worse. And that is that. I think that just shows it's this version of the Falcon is just as good as the comic versions of the Falcon, where he's the best friends with Cap. All right, so going from Bucky and Falcon to the other great version of Spider-Man in this movie. Tom Holland's Spider-Man is a perfect portrayal of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. I didn't really like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies that much. I like The Amazing Spider-Man better. Amazing Spider-Man 2, not so much. You've got... And the way he's introduced leaves open a lot more for the fact that this movie ends and the Sokovia Accords are still in place. And there is still a rift between the Avengers. And I can't wait till Cap realizes that Spider-Man's a 15-year-old kid. And that Tony brought him into that fight. That is going to make for even more tension between the two later on down the line. But when we're introduced to Peter Parker, he is this kid, and when, you know, the jokes that are made about basically Marissa Tomei playing Aunt May, and like, you know, your aunt is uncharacteristically hot. Like, it's why? It's just, there were so, as far as Spider-Man comes into this movie, there's so many, like, meta jokes. It's ridiculous, and I think that comes from the strength of the Russo brothers on shows like Community, where there was a lot of meta jokes in Community, so, and they didn't feel like beat you over the head. They felt very natural, and they felt very natural in this movie as well. When Tony is basically in the room with Parker, and he's like, he knows, you know, he's there for a reason. He knows he's Spider-Man. And the fact that Tom Holland's like, nope, his Peter Parker's like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. That's, you know, they do that all with computers and things like that. So yeah, no, that's all fake. And, you know, he knows where the suit is, obviously, because he can scan the room, and he's sitting there telling us, and we don't get beat over the head with a Spider-Man origin. He's like, well, you know, there was this thing that happened, and it's a long story, and just, you know, since it happened, my senses are up to 11, and, you know, like, Tony doesn't even know how his powers work. He's, like, assuming, like, he uses sticky gloves and things like that, and really the only thing that is, they talk about technology-wise is the web spray, and he's like, man, the tensile strength on that stuff's off the charts, and he goes, who engineered it? And he's like, I did. So you automatically know right from jump that this Peter Parker is going to be a genius, which is what Peter Parker should be. A ridiculously intelligent genius. And we're going to get that in the new Spider-Man movies that are going to be coming out. That, by the way, are going to be creatively controlled by Marvel and Disney. Sony is going to make them, but they are going to be creatively controlled by Marvel, so that they fit in continuity and they fit in with the rest of the tone and everything that makes the Marvel movie so great. The fight with Spider-Man, when it came to that big airport scene and Spider-Man makes his debut, and he snatches up Cap's shield and he just doesn't know how to articulate. He like starts having a conversation with Tony, and he's like salutes Cap. He's like a big fan, and you know, he fanboys out at this moment of meeting like Iron Man and Captain America. And what's really kind of also sets the tone of what is going on in this movie is Spider-Man is very much in the same philosophy as Captain America in this. He's like, if you have the ability to do something and you don't do it, then it's your fault. So he kind of like straddles the line of, you know, he hits the nerve with Tony and he's like, yeah, you know, we have the ability to do something and we don't do it, we're in the wrong. But what Parker's talking about is, no, if I have the ability to help people, and if I see someone getting mugged, I'm going to go help them. You know, if there's a car wreck about to happen, I'm going to go stop that. Not, I'm going to wait for someone to tell me that's the right thing to do. I'm just going to go do it because it's the right thing to do. Which is very much in line with Steve and Cap and the rest, and his side. And it is in line with Iron Man and his side. It's just Iron Man wants someone to tell him what's right. So he doesn't have to feel bad when something he does goes wrong. The fight at the airport, which is like this massive, great action sequence that looks like it is pulled straight from a comic book, shows off everyone's ability and their powers perfectly. Now there's a lot going on in this fight scene, and the Russos, who are from a background of dealing with shows that have a lot of main characters, deal with everyone perfectly in this. We have everyone square off. We've got Black Panther fighting Bucky. We've got Hawkeye and Black Widow fighting one another. We have Ant-Man fighting everybody. Spider-Man's jumping in and out of everything. It is like a big comic book splash page, and it's just done so great. Best action sequence I have seen in a long time. I'm hard-pressed to find a better action sequence. Just in general, there are a lot of action sequences in this movie that are very well done. That one, on the other hand, is like miles ahead. That goes into what another standout character in this movie would be Ant-Man. He stole the scenes that he was in. He is just as comedic as he was in the Ant-Man movie. He is just as comedic as Spider-Man is in this movie. Again, he is this guy who's just like out of his element. Yeah, he has a suit that allows him to do this stuff. But then he comes face to face with Captain America, and you finally get to see what Captain America is in this universe. Captain America is supposed to be this person who has inspired so many other people. And you see Scott Lang meeting Captain America for the first time, and he's like dumbstruck. He misspeaks. He acknowledges, I'm shaking your hand way too long. He doesn't know what to do, and he's like, I'm so happy. And his back and forth with Falcon about what happened in Ant-Man was just hilarious. In that airport fight scene, he like has this little Tonka, like this little Hot Wheels truck, and he tells Cap, throw this at this, and he throws it and it like shoots back up and it explodes, and he's like, oh, I thought that was a water truck. And Cap just looks at him like, what? And so it was those things, like, yes, it was great, and it was like this awesome scene, and then Paul Rudd's like, Ant-Man's like, I thought that was a water truck, I didn't want it to explode like that. So it was hilarious, and then the way people were treating Ant-Man, because they know, like, again, because Ant-Man's movie happened kind of segregated from everything else other than Falcon, that you get this, like, everyone's surprised at his powers, which was great to see everyone genuinely like, what the hell is going on? You know, he takes down Black Widow, which was quite funny, but then she shoots him with one of her little sting things, and it was very comedic. He pesters the hell out of War Machine. The best bit was when he jumped into Iron Man's suit, and he's talking, and Tony can hear him, and he's like, who is that? He's like, I am your conscience, I know we haven't spoken in a while. So that was hilarious, and then the piece de resistance of that entire airport scene is when he decides to go giant. Many of you know Ant-Man is also a character. He goes by the name of Giant Man. When he shoots up to be like huge in size. And he does that and he's like, I've only done this once and I passed out, so if I rip myself in half, don't come back for me. And he like goes huge and he like grabs Rhodey and he's swinging Rhodey around and Tony's like, give me back my Rhodey. It was just hilarious, and then which leaves us open to an even funnier bit with Spider-Man, who's like, hey guys, remember that really old movie called Empire Strikes Back? And everybody's like, what? How old is this guy? And so like, I didn't carbon date him, he's a bit on the young side, and they do the at on Hoth thing to Giant Man, and then they knock him out and he shrinks back down. Oh, so funny. It was so funny. Another thing that I like about this movie is, again, the way they treat Hawkeye. I liked the way they treated Hawkeye in Age of Ultron. They made him, like, everyone was like, Hawkeye is nice. You're like, who cares about Hawkeye? Like, you care about Hawkeye, like, in Age of Ultron. He had a family. You can say, like, no, I'm just a normal guy with a bow and arrow, but I'm here doing this because I can, and I should. And again, he's here, he comes in and he shows up because Wanda saved his life. In Age of Ultron, and basically she became an Avenger because of that speech he gave to her and her brother. And then her brother dies, and her brother dies saving him. So he owes a debt to Wanda. And I don't think a lot of people who have been talking about this get that. That he isn't there strictly because Cap asked him. He is there because he owes a debt to Wanda. Like, Quicksilver died saving him. So her brother's dead because of him, essentially. So he owes her a debt. He owes her a life debt. Like, your brother sacrificed himself to keep me alive. I am going to do whatever I can to protect you. And when it was basically, you know, she's being held captive, Tony's holding her prisoner at the compound. He's like, no, I'm going to go and I'm going to do what I need to do because I owe you. Like, whatever I need to do, there's nothing that I'm going to be able to redo to repay for you for what your brother did. You know, I'm still alive, my kids still have their father because your brother sacrificed himself for me. Like, that, I think that is what is missing, what people are missing when they talk about Hawkeye in this movie and like why he is in the movie. They're missing that he has a very big reason to be there. And I don't think they remember that. I don't think they're putting it together when he said, I have a debt to pay. Like, they don't, like, it's that one line, and you get it. Understood in Age of Ultron what happened, like, you get it. The minute he goes, I have a debt to repay, and Wanda's in the background of that image, you know why he's there. He's not there for Cap, he's not there for anybody. He is there for Wanda. And I like that. Like, his motivations in this movie are unquestionable. Like, it's not about the Sokovia Accords. It's not about any of that. Which it becomes that at the end when you see him locked up and he's like going after Tony and he's talking shit to Tony. Like, but the reason for him to be there and fight, and even when Tony like goes, you have a wife and kids, you should know better. Like, as long as you remember that line, I have a debt to repay. Yes, I have a wife and kids and I get to go home to them eventually because her brother sacrificed his life for me. So whatever you are doing to her is wrong, and I have to make sure she is done right by. So that was that to me is like, it's not over. They don't hit you over the head with it. They expect you as an audience member to remember, oh yeah, like, the only reason Quicksilver's alive is, the only reason Hawkeye's alive because Quicksilver died for him. And Quicksilver was Wanda's brother, and the only reason Hawkeye's in this movie doing anything is because Hawkeye owes so much to Scarlet Witch. Which kind of comes up again when he's fighting Black Widow at the airport, and they're like, are we still friends? And he's like, depends on how hard you hit me. And then Wanda grabs her foot and like flings her across the way, and he's like, Wanda was like, you're pulling your punches. And he's like, what can I do? I don't hate her. but I'm here for you, basically. I am not gonna kill Natalie, because this entire situation is fucked. And speaking of Scarlet Witch, we get what in the comic book, what fans of the comic books were hoping we would see, that the beginning of Vision falling for Wanda, and we get a lot of that in it. Like, it's not knock you over the head obnoxious unless you know what you're looking for, but there's very much an undertone of Vision has feelings for Scarlet Witch, to the point that when he accidentally shoots Rhodey out of the sky, and Tony goes, "What happened?" He goes, "I was distracted." And he goes, "How does that happen?" He goes, "I don't know." And I think at that moment he realizes, my attention at almost a human level was on someone else, and I was distracted. I wasn't a machine. I was a human at that moment. I made a mistake because I was more concerned about the well-being of someone else. And he says it early in the movie. He's like, "I want the world to see you like I see you." But I think at that moment when he tells Tony, "I was distracted," it's more of a realization of himself. Like, at that moment, when I took that shot, I was human. Like, I was being yelled at like a machine, but I was human and I made a mistake. Now, it is clear to see in this movie that Scarlet Witch is the most powerful character that they have so far. And they have so many ways that they can bring in the X-Men universe into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And Wanda is one of those ways. Like in the comic books, we got the House of M because Wanda decided she had a mental breakdown and she completely altered reality to where mutants were the ruling class and the world fundamentally changed. And that was all because Wanda wanted it to. So I think if we ever get to that point, there are a few ways that they can bring in the X-Men without having to go, "Oh, they've just been here the whole time and we have never talked about them." Like, you could have Wanda, something happen to Wanda, and she goes nuts and she just recreates the entire world, which brings back Quicksilver, which brings all the other X-Men and all mutants in, because she doesn't want to be looked at as singularly being like this demonized person, like, because she's the only one like her. And the way you hear it on the news, because no one has any secret identities, which is I'm going to get into as one of the cons about this movie, like, the news was calling her out specifically, like, what does a person like Wanda Maximoff have any right doing anything? Why does she have the right to use these powers or whatever? Like, they're ostracizing her. Because she is different, they are ostracizing her and she doesn't know what to do. So I could see them eventually doing a House of M type storyline where she rips reality apart. I also could see in Infinity War Thanos using the reality gem to rip reality apart. There's quite a few ways in which they could do this, and I hope that the people behind Kevin Feige is smart enough to realize this. The last big thing I'm going to talk about as a pro of this movie is Black Panther. Black Panther in this movie is spectacular. The introduction of Wakanda is spectacularly done. We don't say it's like some, it's exactly what it is in the comics. It is a country that has cut itself off from ever. The last thing I'm going to talk about here is going to be, as far as a pro, is going to be Black Panther. Black Panther was done perfectly in this movie, and I can see what the Black Panther movie is going to be about, and I want to see this movie now. Black Panther was done so well in this movie. He is so majestic and regal, and he just reeks of being the king of a nation now. His father dies in this movie, which is what sets him off to go after Winter Soldier because they're blaming it on him. And as he tells Cap once, there's this other action sequence in which Bucky gets away and Cap finds Bucky. And Bucky's like, I didn't do this. I wasn't even in Vienna. So Bucky goes on the run because, people are coming, the SWAT team shows up. But then Black Panther shows up and is attacking on the roof, and there's this big chase scene. And another one of the best spectacular visual looking stunts I've seen. Bucky grabs this guy off of a motorcycle, swings the motorcycle around, jumps on it, and takes off all in like one sweeping motion. It was fucking spectacular. But there's this chase. Black Panther's running him down. Cap's in pursuit. And after this action sequence is done and they all get caught, Sam's messing with him like, why a cat? The way Cap, this dude shows up dressed like a cat and you don't want to know why. What's his deal? And so T'Challa, Black Panther explains it like, the Black Panther has been a protector of my people for generations. It's a position handed down from warrior to warrior. But now as a warrior and a king, how long do you think you can keep your friend alive and keep him away from me? Like, he is that, like, I'm a freaking king now, and I have been bred to be a ruler of a country one day. But I have also been bred to be, like, a killing machine warrior who will do whatever it takes to defend my people and my country. So I cannot wait to see his movie, which I assume is going to be about everyone finding out that he has Bucky. The after credit scene is Cap in Wakanda, and Bucky basically going, the only safe way for me to exist is to put me back on ice until somebody can figure out how to deprogram what Hydra put in. So he voluntarily goes back into cryostasis, and it is T'Challa, Black Panther, now the king of Wakanda, who is going, if I, my father and Bucky were both victims, and if I can help at least one of them find peace, it's worth it. And Steve's like, when they find out he's here, they're going to come for him. He goes, I would like to see them try. So I think that movie is going to be about, someone's going to find out that the Winter Soldier is in Wakanda, and they're going to be going in. You'll probably see T'Challa's brother get brought up at that point, or is it his father's brother who's going to use it to try and usurp the throne. There's going to be a lot of like Game of Thrones-esque like power struggle and things like that, which is going to make that movie very different than any other Marvel movie, which is going to make that movie way more interesting. I think that movie will be on the lines of a Winter Soldier, of a Civil War, of a Captain America movie that is very more character-driven. Now, some things that I did not like about this movie, and it's some minor issues, really nothing that throws the movie off. Black Widow is my #1 biggest problem with this movie. I, to this day, still think her character is pointless. Even more so that in the opening action sequence when they're going after Crossbones, you can tell when it's her and when it's Scarlett Johansson and when it's her stunt double. Like the fight scenes between her stunt double and the henchman is so fast and it's moving, it's blah, 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 and you see why Black Widow is an Avenger. And then when it cuts to the shots where you have to show off Scarlett Johansson's face and she's fighting, it's so slow. And it's like, this is why people look at her character and go, she's pointless. Because you show her like doing all this stuff, and then when you have to listen to her speak, and Scarlett Johansson's on screen, it slows down and it drags, and it's like, this is why we don't like you. And I think Scarlett Johansson is completely overhyped. She does not need to be in this movie. The Black Widow has always been a secondary character. She is connected to a shit ton of characters, no doubt. And I'm not saying her character doesn't need to be around in the MCU. I'm just saying as a main character who people are screaming needs her own movie, no. It is not worth the time. Like, the action scenes would all be her stunt double. Like, so yeah, you can show her being a complete badass, but it's not Scarlett Johansson. It's not the character that is going to be speaking. Like, it's like you have two different characters. You have Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow, who does all the character stuff, and then like whoever her stunt people are, like stunt people completely believable, but when you actually have to have Scarlett Johansson doing stunt work and fight scenes, it just looks so bad. It's laughable. And then it was like they shoehorned her in spots because she's supposed to be a main character and we need to find something for her to do. So, which leads into like the next problem I have, which is Peggy's death. But I'll get to Peggy's death. Let me talk about after Peggy's funeral. Black Widow shows up and she's like, "Oh, you're gonna like everybody's signing," da, 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 da. And Cap literally goes, "So then why are you here?" And she's like, "I didn't want you to be alone." Like Sam was there, his best friend was at the wedding with him. Sharon was at the fucking... I mean, his best friend Sam was at the funeral. Sharon Carter, who he now realizes was Peggy's niece, is at the funeral. You weren't needed. It was like you were put into this scene specifically so we could have you in a scene that you really weren't needed in, because the next thing you know, you go from London to Vienna for the Accords. Like, it's edited in a way it looks almost like it's the same day, and I know they're not that far apart that she could be there in the same day. But there was really no reason for her to show up at the funeral. Like, everybody wasn't at the funeral, which was kind of sad that, like, Tony wasn't at the funeral. At this point, there is nothing going on. Like, nobody has done anything. There's nobody hunting anybody else. Tony Stark, whose father founded S.H.I.E.L.D. with Peggy, you think would have been at the funeral. You would think a lot of... the funeral was an opportunity to show a lot of people who probably didn't need to do anything else but they didn't. And it is one of those... I don't know whether or not they did it because they don't know what's going on with the TV show, or maybe there was some more stuff there that got cut out and we'll see it on the DVD or the Blu-ray. But Black Widow being there was absolutely pointless. Which brings me to the whole Peggy's death thing. I knew from jump when I first saw like the scenes, the set pictures of a funeral. I'm like, that's Peggy's funeral. No one is dying in this movie. If Cap's in that scene and there's a funeral, it's Peggy's death. We saw in the last movie, like, that she was very old. She had Alzheimer's. And we saw what kind of toll that took on to Steve, being that they're basically the same age, and she held out all these years and he finally had her back, and she was barely there because her mind was gone. And it's a very, tragic end for a character who is a very well written, very well portrayed, strong female character. I really hope we get a season 3. Season 2 of Agent Carter wasn't as good as the first season. I hope we get a season 3 in which we can get back to the, it'll be a little bit further out from the era, so maybe less misogyny and more of Peggy being able to do what she does best. Even in Sharon's eulogy, she said, my aunt came up at a time when women weren't allowed or thought to be able to do things, and she did things. And the speech, the eulogy that Sharon gives is what really cements in Cap's mind that he's doing the right thing. Like, there are times for compromise, and you should always try and compromise first. But then there are times where the world is wanting you to change, and you shouldn't, so you tell the world, no, you change. And I call the funeral and the death a con, because I think there's an edit where that scene is way more important. That scene is way longer. That scene has way more to do with Cap's decision. And I hate it because it came across as a cheap way to get rid of a character, but I love it because it is a character that meant so much to Steve Rogers that it's going to fundamentally change him, and it did. It solidified his resolve no matter what. That he is Captain America, goddammit, and the world is he knows better than anyone else does because the world is going to shit, and he wasn't a part of it going to shit. So he knows how things should be. And he always treated Peggy as an equal anyway. So it's not like he's like, you know, oh, it's the 1950s mentality, women, blah, blah, blah. No. Steve always treated Peggy as an equal, if not better. Like, when he was in training, like, he knew Peggy was better than him. And it's part of the reason he fell in love with her. So I think the realization he came to in the last movie that she had had a good life and that she lived a full life, he was able to let go. He still loved her, no doubt. That was still the love of his life. But we saw in Winter Soldier, he kind of started moving on when he just thought Agent 13 was his next door neighbor. And there was flirting back and forth in that movie. So when it came to the kiss, it was kind of shocking that it just happened. But in hindsight, when you think about it, there's enough to kind of like go back and look like, no, in Winter Soldier, there was the flirtation and he asked her out. And in this one, it's obvious that when his reaction when he sees her at the funeral, that there has been something between them, like a friendship, an ongoing relationship. It may have not been a relationship, that he finally kisses her in this movie, and he's like, that was a long time coming, and she goes, yeah, it has been. So there's, like, it caught me by surprise when I first saw it. I was like, it kind of was cringeworthy. But on the second viewing, I kind of get it, and it wasn't just done because, oh, Sharon Carter and Steve Rogers, they're a thing in the comic. And she's still like the granddaughter or grandniece or whatever of Peggy in the comics. So I don't find it horrible. I mean, he fell in love with someone who just happened to be related to her. But it wasn't in like a creepy way. Like, he fell in love with her before he knew who she was. Well, I fell in love, but he fell for her before like he knew who she was. Baron Zemo, or Colonel Zemo, as that was his military rank in this one, was not the Zemo that is in the comics, not the Zemo that is in the cartoons. So this was a very different version of Zemo. He was Zemo in name only. His motivations were I can't question his motivations for why he did what he did. You know, he saw basically his, you know, he wasn't out for revenge for Sokovia. He was out for revenge for his family, which is the motivation in which Tony, like, takes when he sees the woman comes. Is it Viola Davis? The very beginning when Tony's approached by a woman from the State Department, and she's like, you know, yeah, I work for the State Department. It's not as grandiose as what you do, but, you know, it helped me raise a son who went on to do great things, and you killed him. And, you know, again, that was why Tony was so accepting of people telling him what to do, because he's like, I did kill this kid. When in reality, he didn't kill this kid. You know, Ultron may have ultimately caused his death, but which then ultimately falls on Tony for creating Ultron. So we have the same instance of why all of this started to begin with. If Zemo would have gotten the information out of that Russian that he was torturing, and when he went to go find Winter Soldier's code book, if he'd have just told him where the hell the base was, nothing else would have happened. So it made his plan bloodier to have happen what all happened. But again, that comes down to Hydra. Hydra ultimately was responsible for all of this, because that Hydra agent was like, no, I'm not telling you shit. Hail Hydra, kill me. Like, Hydra was able to he's ultimately the cause of all this destruction. Now, all Zemo wanted to do was get the evidence that the Winter Soldier killed Stark's parents. That's all he wanted. He wanted to show Tony Stark, oh, no. Winter Soldier killed your parents, and oh, by the way, more than likely Steve knew. To cause a rift to destroy the Avengers from the inside. Hydra was the one who was like, no, we're not giving you any information. Hell, Hydra, kill me. Which ultimately led to, alright, I'm going to have to blackmail the Winter Soldier, kill some people in order to bring this all together. So, it was a little convoluted, but his motivations weren't bad. I just wish we would get an actual villain from the comics that is the villain from the comics. Zemo would have been great as the grandson. Like they did it in the Avengers Assemble cartoon. It's not Zemo from World War II. It's like his great-great-grandson who is trying to restore the legacy, Zemo's legacy by, you know, finding the super soldier serum that Zemo had created that worked. So we didn't get that, and I think Disney's a little hesitant to use any of these World War II origin villains because they were basically Nazis. They did as much as they could not to have Nazis in First Avenger, and so everything became Hydra, which I'm fine with. Hydra is like all over. I don't believe for a minute Hydra's done like the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show said it was. There's so many heads of Hydra, it's ridiculous. So, it's not the last time we'll see Hydra. And I just think his motivations paid off at the end in his character arc. When after he gets Tony and Cap and Bucky to start fighting in this missile silo, he goes out to sit on an ice cliff and he listens to the phone message from his wife one last time and he deletes it and he's going to shoot himself and Black Panther keeps him from doing it. And Black Panther's like, you made me almost kill an innocent man. And he's like, he's not that innocent. And, you know, he's like, you've been so consumed with revenge and they are consumed with revenge and I'm not going to let revenge consume me anymore. And he keeps Zemo from offing himself. And he's like, the living aren't done with you yet. Which makes Black Panther all the more awesome. He's like, no, you're gonna face judgment and punishment for what you did. And I'm gonna be the one who, you killed my father, you did this, I'm going to be the one that brings you in for justice. Which just makes that character of Black Panther so much more regal and so much more believable as like a king of this nation. He was groomed to be like this hyper-intelligent, you know, person who's able to make decisions that other people can't make. Which, the last thing that I'm going to talk about as a con, and this is really a con for all of the Marvel movies, no one has a secret identity. And they could have established secret identities in this movie, except every time there was news, they referred to people by their names. So, Winter Soldier just wasn't, the assailant or the assassin known as Winter Soldier escaped. No, they were like, Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, escaped. And, which I don't get, like, why did that become public knowledge after Winter Soldier? Like, I know Black Widow put out all those files, so basically those files led to everyone not having a secret identity. Even though they said they were encrypted, you know, Zemo says they were encrypted and people got into them. Obviously, it became known Bucky was the Winter Soldier. It became known that Sam Wilson was the Falcon. I was okay with Captain America's identity being out. I mean, he was a soldier. It would have been government record at some point of what his real name was. But, you know, the fact that I think maybe Ant-Man still has his secret identity. Wanda doesn't have a secret identity. Everyone on the news knew her name. I'm assuming everyone knows that Clint is Hawkeye. Maybe not. But I just wish people had still had secret identities. Which is why you could have done a different version of Civil War down the road. They're doing a Civil War 2 in the comics right now. You can still do Civil War 2 if you start establishing people with secret identities. because at that point then you can say no, you have to come out. You can still do the registration. At that point, it's more than a Sokovia Accords. It's a registration thing, and you can do more of it that way. But really, that's my biggest. That's the biggest gripe I've had with any of the actual Marvel movies. I was glad that Thor and Banner wasn't in this movie. I think that would have taken away from some stuff with the action scenes. There would have been a way more collateral damage in that airport scene than there was. It would have been way more collateral damage in the opening, which would have just made it comedic. So I'm glad they weren't in it. We'll get them in Thor Ragnarok. No real the after credit scenes. Like I said, one of them was Bucky being refrozen, and the other one was for Spider-Man to set up Spider-Man movie. You know, essentially being Spider-Man essentially being in the Marvel Cinematic Universe now. Again, with Spider-Man, he was so great in this, and like he would say, like he was so meta. He's like, he calls out Cap's shield for like ignoring physics. It was hilarious. Like he like literally goes, that thing doesn't follow physics at all, does it? So Spider-Man, I'm looking so forward to Spider-Man Homecoming when it comes out in 2017. I am looking forward to Doctor Strange, which comes out later this year, because I want to see Mads Mikkelsen as a true villain. I really hope his villain is so much better than what we have been getting. So, that is my thoughts. I love the movie. Go see the movie. Just some of those gripes. So, until next time, Internet, I know this is going to be a long one, and you're probably not going to watch all of it. But thank you for watching what you do. I love you. I love that you watch it. I love that people love what I do, some of you. So, until next time, later.